Hi, I'm Kent Harris. I heard once, many years ago, that the odds of being born in the United States to a mom and dad that raised you and could afford to put you through college was greater than winning the lottery. I feel like I've won the lottery a dozen times.
I'm Patsie Harris. I was born Patsie Charlene Strauss in August the 26th, 1939, in George West, Texas, in my grandparents' front living room. I was born in 39. My brother was born in 40. Then my sister in 44 and my baby brother in 45. They were the last, born at home. All the grandkids and other kids were born in the hospital. So my grandparents, Pew, my mother's people, came from Ireland in 1831. And they somehow got some kind of merger land. There's 8 kids, they each got 50 acres, so there was 400 acres from my great granddaddy Pew. He worked for the highway department for all of his life, and of course my grandmother was a homemaker and baby maker. My mother had 7 brothers and sisters, 4 girls and 4 boys. My dad's parents came from Little Rock, Arkansas. I really don't know how they ended up in George West. He was a carpenter, and his home burned in Arkansas, so he just kind of picked a date that he wanted his birthday to be. So he picked May the 24th. I think for some reason that was a good date. My grandmother has 7 sisters, no brothers, 7 sisters. So she grew up on this farm, and then the land that they had, my uncle inherited and built a home there later on. I don't know how my mother and daddy met. I know that I guess at school, they had a little Moorback school where they went to school. And I think all the grades, were in that one building. They rode horseback together. He played football, and George West, real good football player, we understand. They only went to the 11th grade then, so he quit school after football season was over. We don't know why or what. And then they married in 1938, and then I was born in 39, so they didn't waste much time. My dad was in the Navy. He never did go overseas. He was stationed in California until 45, 46, and so we lived with my grandparents till my dad bought this little house and then remodeled it. It's very simple, very plain. It was only 2-bedroom. He added on to the back of it, and my sister and I shared a room in the front, and the boys shared a room in the back. Very humble beginnings. My daddy was, I won't say cold, but he was very reserved. I don't remember ever hearing him tell my mother he loved her. I guess we just knew because he provided for us, and we didn't have everything we wanted, but we had everything we needed, So we knew he, and we would kiss him, but his was always just like a peck. I remember him kissing my mother. It was just kind of a peck on the cheek or on the lips. He would give an hour before he'd take 5 minutes from someone. And so I learned be honest and be truthful and do the best you can do. My grandparents kissed on us and loved on us all the time. So I remember growing up at my grandparents'. Not a lot to do, in the town, but we had neighbors, and we played outside, and we jumped rope. We played Red Rover Come Over. We played football, went to school, came home, did our homework, and we lived real close to the school. Most of us came home for lunch. My dad came home for lunch and was for an hour, and then he'd sleep for about 15 minutes and then go back to work. But she cooked 3 meals a day, and then in the evening, my sister would always get a stomach ache, so I had to do the dishes most of the time. She wasn't real handy around the house. She liked to cook and I liked to clean, so it worked out pretty good. The 1st grade, I cried every day after lunch because I wanted to go home. Finally, my mother told the teacher, she's not sick. She needs to stay here all day. But I was pretty shy. So, but that I finally worked out okay. So we hated Mondays because my mother washed and we had to get clothes off the line and fold them. And then we hated Tuesdays because we had to iron. I ironed as long as I could stand up to the ironing board. I ironed my uncle's shirts that were like sheet wagons to iron. They were huge, but that's how I made spending money. Beeville was where we went to shop for clothes and stuff like that. Marston's was the big store. They had groceries and what they called dry goods and the dime store all in one. So, we'd go there to buy groceries and material. And of course, most of our clothes were made, handmade. My mother was the only girl that didn't sew. She had 3 sisters that sewed and everything, but she didn't. So most of our clothes were handmade and hand-me-downs, so from the others. I thought we were poor. And I realized later that we were so rich in everything else. We had 2 parents that loved us, and, we played together and cried together and fought together. So unlike George, he was an only child, so he kind of had a lonely growing up. My parents, they're very strict with me because I was the oldest, but I could not go to town with shorts on. Even after I met George when I was a senior, I got chewed out really bad one day. You don't wear shorts around boys. I couldn't drive the car unless I went to my grandparents. I was a junior high cheerleader for 2 years and a high school cheerleader for 3 years. So that was practices and what have you. So we didn't have a lot of sports when I was in high school. We had basketball, which I tried to play, but I wasn't very good. I don't remember if we even had a track team. We had volleyball, basketball, softball, but I never did try to play softball. Mainly I worked after school. I'm dating the enemy. They beat us every year. George was in high school, and then when I was a senior, we beat them. So I climbed the water tower and painted the score on the water tower. A bunch of us that's when you could climb it, And the boys kept saying, there was a couple of boys and a couple of girls. I'm not going to do that. We got out here. Now, what are you going to do? Not going to do anything. Well, I'll do it. So I climbed the water tower and painted the score on the water tower. So that's been my claim to fame. And, if we got in trouble at school, we got in trouble when we got home. Of course, we never got in trouble. My brother did. But he was the 45, he was beginning to feel his oats and what have you. I remember they'd go down to the river and smoke, drink beer, My parents didn't know all that, but he was the kind of the rebel, That was the beginning of the other generation. So we had a curfew. There's nothing you can't do before midnight that you can do after. So you be home, and we were home. My daddy was Church of Christ, and that was a kind of a no-no when they married because, Church of Christ and Catholic don't mix too well. And it's real funny because I don't think my daddy ever went to church, but he married my mother in the church. Never missed Mass on Sunday morning. Always had to go to early Mass, too. We couldn't go to 10 o'clock Mass. We had to go to early Mass. That was our punishment for getting home late. We came to Padre Island every Labor Day. That's the only vacation I can remember ever taking. We go to Padre Island, and I'd get so sunburned that I could hardly talk. And then when we get home, my mother would give me a permanent before school started. My sister had curly hair, and I didn't have curly hair, so she'd give me a permanent. First thing I did when I got old enough was cut my hair short, so I didn't have to mess with it. So we had a camper on the back of our pickup, and my grandmother and granddaddy and daddy and mother and us, I guess all 4 of us, went to Arkansas. He had two sisters and no brothers, 2 sisters that lived there, and we enjoyed that. Arkansas is a beautiful place. So when I was, I guess I was a 8th grade or a freshman, my dad came home and said, Mr. Brown's looking for somebody to work in his office, sending out statements and stuff. And I told him you might be interested. Oh, thanks, Dad. So I worked there. Matter of fact, I worked all my life, I think. And then I worked in the office there after school and on Saturday where they send out statements at the store where they sent out bills for dry goods and groceries and dime store and everything. And then Dick McKendry opened a little soda shop with Sam burgers, and then I worked there for a while. When I graduated, my aunt at Thelma was a big educator. She taught school for years and years. She paid for all my cousins to go to college if their parents couldn't afford it. Well, she paid for it. So my daddy said, no, I didn't need to go to college. I could take a business course and do just as well. So that's what I did. But when I graduated, you graduate and you get married. And so I wanted to go to college. Well, yeah, I was good in English. My English teacher wanted me to go to college and become an English teacher. But my daddy said, no, we don't need to do that. So I started working. I worked in Beeville for 3 years, $1 an hour. I made $40 a week. Once I started working, though, I didn't have a lot of spare time because it was a 30-minute drive to Beeville, and then I worked 8 hours, and then 30-minute drive home. And so then my dad comes to me and he said, well, we need to buy a car, and I can't afford the payments by myself. He said, can you help me? Yeah. How much do you want? Well, if you can pay $45 a month, I'll pay $45 a month. So our first car was $90 a month, and I helped him pay for it. So I feel real fortunate. I had great parents. Like I said, I didn't know any different. I thought that everybody was that way. But then I would go to my girlfriend's house, and I see that their family was maybe a little closer. But you live with what you grow up with, so you adapt. George's parents now are from East Texas. I can remember him saying Tenny Hall, Timpson, Bimbo, and Blair or something like that.
Both of my parents lived out in the country and were farmers out in Live County, about 25 miles from Three Rivers. My mother's family lived in Oklahoma, and they moved to Live County. My dad lived in East Texas, and his family moved to Live County. Well, in the early part of his life, my dad was a farmer. And then when I started school, we were about 25 miles out in the country, and they didn't like for me riding the bus that far. So my dad left the farm and went to Three Rivers and got a job in a service station so that I wouldn't have to ride the bus so far. It was the place where my dad grew up, or didn't actually grow up, but it was where his family moved to when they moved to South Texas. My uncle and aunt moved on it and took over running the place. And then he eventually bought a service station of his own and ran it the rest of his life. I helped my dad on weekends and stuff, washing cars and just helping them around, putting gas in cars. I remember going out, helping my dad feed the cows and the horses.
Was ag a part of your youth as well?
Yes.
What did you raise, or what were you into?
I raised steers, showed them at the local county fair.
Sell them, make some money?
It probably didn't make any money, but sold them.
How did your parents raise you?
Not that strict, I wouldn't say.
You felt like you had some freedom, or?
Yeah, but I wasn't a bad kid.
Happy family?
Yeah, I think we had a happy family. Hard-working family. My parents were hard workers.
Any lessons they taught you that stuck?
Not really, just honesty. Remember going to town on Saturdays. Just go to town every Saturday and buy groceries and do whatever. Yeah, there wasn't much for us to do. Once I got my driver's license, we rode around town a lot. That was about it. Just wasting time and gasoline. I drove my parents' car until I guess I was like a senior in high school. They got me a car. I got a 55 Chevrolet.
Before that, did you have any jobs as a boy?
One summer I worked for a seismograph company, and other summers I worked out in the country for my cousin hauling hay. We lived in a house on Leroy Street, which was about 3 blocks from the school. So I walked to school every day. It was a 2-bedroom house, just a white house.
What would you do for fun as a little boy in Three Rivers, Texas?
We played out in the street a lot. I can't remember exactly where all we played, but
Do you remember before school started, did sports matter to you?
not until I was about 7th grade. I liked school all right.
Did you favor like math or English, or
Not particularly.
school was a conduit to do other things, huh?
Yeah. My grades were okay.
Yeah.
In junior high, I played football and basketball. In high school, I just played football and track. I was fast.
Like the fastest?
Yeah, fast one in school in my grade. Yeah, I started playing sports in the 7th grade and just stuck with it. And then I was pretty good in track when I got in high school. We won the state championship one year. My high school coach had a lot to do with influencing me to go to college, and he helped me decide where to go and what have you.
Were your parents involved in that at all?
Probably not a whole lot other than the fact that they encouraged me to go.
So what was your high school coach's name?
Al Cobb, he was a great guy. Oh, he was good with all the boys. I had an ag teacher that had a big influence in my life too. His name was Carl Weber.
Well, he wanted to get married, and I said, no, we're not getting married until you get a college education. His parents never finished high school. I knew how important it was, for him to get a college education. He said he felt out of place.
I didn't feel a part of it. The guys didn't really welcome me there like I felt like they should. So I was good enough that my coach got me a scholarship. So I went to Victoria Junior College and I ran, and we won the national championship.
Who was your coach at Victoria?
Ed Shin, great guy.
Did he help you get into A&I?
Yes.
How does that happen? He's like, oh, it's a 2-year school, so that's part of his job is to...
Yeah, see if the guys go on somewhere else.
Right.
He said everybody was either going to be a preacher or was a misfit, so they didn't want to stay out there. So
then I got a scholarship to Texas A&I in Kingsville and ran 2 years there.
So his coach and his ag teacher took him to A&I. He registered on the last day and then liked it after he got there, ran on the track team.
How did life change when you switched to Texas A&I?
Well, not really that much.
Still had a dorm or an apartment or
Dorm.
still in a dorm? What did y'all eat?
We ate in the cafeteria, which was right next door to my dorm.
And then the track was right there, and that was your world.
Yeah.
And on weekends, you'd go see her.
Yeah.
What about during summers during these 4 years?
I worked either at my dad's service station or out on my uncle's and cousins' farms. I ran the quarter mile. Oh, when I was in Victoria, I ran the 100 meters and the relays. I was at Texas A&I, I ran like 400 meters and the relays.
Where all would y'all go?
I know our national meet was in Kansas. We rode the train up there. We had a good mile relay at Kingsville. We went to the Drake relays in Des Moines, Iowa, and went to several big meets. We were undefeated except for we got second place at the Drake relays in Des Moines, Iowa.
What'd you major in?
Physical education, health and physical education.
Did you like the studies side of it?
Not particularly, but I did okay.
But you didn't have a job in college?
No, I ran track. That was my job. Took up quite a bit of my time.
Did you know when you were at Victoria what you wanted to do after school?
Probably not.
My first cousin, Billy, was dating a girl from Three Rivers. And so one day she said, I want you to meet this boy in Three Rivers. Said, all the girls like him, but he won't go with any of them. And I said, why? Well, he's shy. And I said, well, he must be ugly. She said, no, he's nice looking, he's real nice, and he's real popular. And I said, well, you take me where I can see him first. So she takes me to the Tip State Park in Three Rivers where he's playing tennis with a friend. And I said, okay, I'll go on a date with him. I don't know how much later we go to this American Legion.
We were at a teen dance in Three Rivers, my hometown.
Of course, I love to dance, so I had lots of people asking me to dance. Finally, he came over to ask me to dance. And the poor thing was shaking so bad when we were dancing. He was so nervous, never say much.
And it's kind of weird that when I went and asked her to dance, everybody stopped and started clapping.
So then the next time it was ladies' choice. Well, then I went and asked him to dance.
She told me that the second dance was where the ladies ask and that she went and grabbed you.
I can't remember.
Well, we're going to trust her, okay? We're going to trust her.
I didn't know if we connected or not. I knew I liked him, but I didn't know if he liked me. And then not long after that,
Remember, I started going to see her all the time.
he called and asked me if I'd go out, to a movie with him. And I said, yes, we would. So we went to Beeville to the movie. And that night when he kissed me, I knew that's it. It was unlike any kiss I'd ever had. So I knew before our first date, he called and asked me. And I said, now you cannot toot the horn and expect me to come outside. My parents won't allow it. You have to come in. And he did. He was a gentleman. He came in, and of course they loved him because he was quiet. And so that was the beginning of a 5-year relationship and a 61-year marriage. I wasn't sure that he knew, but I pretty much knew. So he asked my dad for my hand, and then he proposed in August, right after he got a job, after he got the job at GP.
I'd been at Gregory Portland only a short while when we got married. I came here in September and we got married in December. Well, I guess I came here in August.
And then my birthday was in August, and so he proposed, and then we got married. He was Baptist, but his mother and daddy didn't go to church. They sent him, and he finally said, if you're not going, I'm not going. So we married in the Catholic Church.
All my relatives came to the Catholic Church, which was nice.
All my family was Catholic. My daddy's family was Church of Christ, and all of George's family was Baptist. So I had a Catholic priest on my side. He had a Baptist minister on his side. But we made it. We made it. So, but he hadn't been working very long, so we couldn't afford a big honeymoon. So we did to Laredo and stayed almost a week, and then came back. It was on his Christmas vacation, so we had to start packing up. And I remember cleaning out my room, and I told my mother, I just don't know if I can do this. You married and you're going to move. So we moved into an apartment.
When you graduated from A&I, how did you go about finding a job?
I guess I just heard about them and went and applied. I went to Banquetti and applied. That didn't work out. So then I heard about Gregory Portland. That was the second one I applied for. I came down and met W.C. Andrews, the superintendent, who was a tremendous guy, and he hired me. So second one I applied for, I got.
Well, I worked in Beeville until we got married, and then we moved down here, and I thought, well, what am I going to do? Because he was coaching and teaching. He was gone a lot.
I taught health and physical education.
And then what was your first coaching job?
It was at Gregory Portland Junior High, teaching health and physical education.
But then as a coach, though, didn't you?
Coached in junior high for 4 years. And then Miss Andrews moved me to high school.
He started at GP and stayed till at 1982. And then he went to Refugio and stayed 19 years. And he came back to GP for 9 years, I think it was. So I went to work for Suntide Refinery. I worked there early in our marriage. And then I got tired of the drive.
Kent, there was a quarterback from Corpus Christi, Ray, and his name was Kent. That's how we named him.
Kent Nix. So we named him William Kent, but when he started school, he went by William. So then we had to send an amendment to his birth certificate and name him Kent William. And when Kerry was born, I spelled it Kerri. Well, he pitched a fit. He wasn't there. Of course, he only came after practice. He didn't come all the time. Mr. Andrews, I think, had to call you the day that she was being born. And I spelled it Kerri. Well, no, it had to have 4 letters like Kent. So we had to cut out one of the R's. Then we had to send an amendment to that birth. The nuns weren't too happy with him then. So, which I didn't think anything about it. And Joe was my sister's middle name, so she was Kerri Jo. Now you see Kerri a lot. You didn't back then. It was a real unusual name, so.
I guess when our kids got old enough, we had a summer track program, so our kids were involved in summer track, which I coached.
Kerri started when she was 5.
Yeah, that's right. I guess we started when they were 6 and 7 years old.
So that's why we never had a vacation, because we always had summer track meets. Then it was a real big, now it's TAAF or something, George?
Well, it's still AAU.
Is it? But I mean, they have national meets in other states. We went, what are some of the places? I can't even think now. We went to Florida, Notre Dame.
Yeah, we went there.
Louisiana. I guess I visited more states when they were in track and field, but he doesn't usually go because he had to go into football.
Yeah.
And so Mr. Klein, a good friend's father, would go and take pictures for us. And so, but it didn't seem like their childhood was any different. I mean, they visited with other kids of the neighborhood, and of course they started driving as soon as they could get a driver's license and had vehicles. But
How did y'all like watching Kent play football?
Oh, it was fun.
Yeah, but of course the mama, you're always scared to get hurt. He sprained his ankle really bad in practice.
Yeah.
And he played the whole season with it taped up. It just used to drive me crazy. He got knocked cuckoo one game, St. Gerard's. They asked him who his girlfriend was, and he said Kerri. That was his sister. But I guess he never really got hurt after that, did he? So he went to A&I. He was going to play football at A&I, and he realized that he's pretty small to play football in college. Broke his leg. So then New Mexico...
He left at midterm.
Yeah, New Mexico Junior College offered him a track scholarship. So he goes there and won the national meet at New Mexico. Indoor meet. And then Baylor offered him after that. So, yeah. He always said if the kids are good in athletics, we won't have to pay for their college, and we didn't have to pay much. You think you love your kids, and then your grandkids come along.
Our granddaughter calls her every day.
Yeah, one granddaughter calls me every day.
From Houston.
Well, they've just been a blessing. Ty was a good athlete, went to TCU. We went to a lot of his games for 4 years, enjoyed that. And then Corey went to A&M. She's dating an attorney now. And then Kenna's back in Houston. She's a speech pathologist. Then Brock's going to A&M. And then Ryan, the oldest one, is a mechanic here in town. So they're all doing really well. But it's been a pleasure. We enjoyed going to I went to Ty's 7th grade and 8th grade games, and freshman and sophomore. And George said, well, before you graduate, I said, George is going to be a senior next year. If you don't quit coaching and go watch him, you're not going to get to. So that's kind of when he quit coaching.
So I retired and they won the state championship that year. And one of my former assistants was a head coach.
What do your grandkids call you guys?
Call me coach.
Yeah, I'm Meemaw, but he's coach. He wasn't old enough to be grandpa, so he's coach. And it stuck. I mean, in-laws call us coach too. It's Meemaw and coach. We get letters addressed to Meemaw and coach. But Corey was good in track, but she wasn't as dedicated. She would have been a good volleyball player, but if she was as dedicated then as she is now about working out and everything, she would have been phenomenal. And then Kenna was our horse person. She loved horses, and of course Kent's always had horses. She barrel raced and that. And now I think Brock. We didn't see a lot of Brock growing up because he was living with his mother, but now that he lives with Kent, well, we get to see a lot more of him. So with our kids, it was never, if you go to college, it was, where do you want to go to college? And where it wasn't important in my generation. We knew it was very important. And Carrie and John and Kent, they made sure their kids had good educations, and we're very proud of that. The long, because he pole vaulted, and that was, oh mercy, that's the first thing that starts and the last thing that ends, and it's terrible to watch because you're always afraid they're going to know height. But Carrie ran in the hurdles and long jumped, so hers were pretty much, it was nice when they go to the same meets because we get to see both of them. But Carrie was an all-state long jumper, an all-state hurdler. He was an altar boy when he was growing up. I don't know that either kid practices Catholicism now, but they did when they were home. And even George got tired of us going to church without him, so he joined. He's not a dyed-in-the-wool Catholic like I am, but I'm cradle. I was born, that. But Kent, they went to religion class and developed a lot of friends there. And then he was an altar boy. They've been baptized and confirmed and all that good stuff. One thing Carrie always, he would yell at her basketball games when she was in junior high. You do this, do that. And finally she said, I play just as well if you don't yell at me during the games. And from that time on, he never said a word. Thought you could make her better, didn't you? Well, we always told them, you don't have to win. Just do your best. That's all we expect of you. Just do your best. And George always told his football players, over the weekend, don't do anything to embarrass yourself, your parents, or the Gregory Portland Wildcats, or the Refugio Bobcats, or whatever. Of course, I'm sure they went out and drank, but he told them that anyway. That was probably one of the hardest things I ever did, was leave my daughter here. But she had gotten cheerleader. And so we had good friends that had coached with George, and they didn't have any children, and they adopted her for the year. But we would come home to her basketball games, during the week and on weekends. And it kind of taught her, what it would be like if we weren't around. So she did all right then too. So that was the hardest thing for me to adjust to, because my dad came home from work at 5 o'clock, and we ate supper, dinner, whatever you want to call it, at 5 o'clock. So I had everything ready that gets home about 7 o'clock. Where have you been? Well, I've been coaching. We had practice. So I had to learn to adjust my meal time. So we're just really proud of the way they've turned out, the way our grandchildren have turned out. I mean, everybody has their ups and downs, but we pretty much always, when one of us disciplined, the other one stood behind the one that had done the discipline. And that I think was a big factor. We didn't argue about, well, that's not going to happen, or, whatever. George is a lot more patient than I am in some ways. I'm more patient at waiting than he is, but we've learned to forgive and forget a lot. Look at each other's good qualities and not the bad ones. Not that he has any bad ones, but no, it's been a good. Doesn't seem like it's been 60 years, but it doesn't seem like our kids are in their 50s either. Carrie says, well, I can't imagine living with somebody 50 years. Well, she's already been married 30, so time flies when you're having fun and everything's going good. We married in '60, and Kent was born in '63, so we didn't have children for a while. Then I got a job at Shell Oil Company in town where I didn't have to travel, and I worked there until I was 6 months pregnant with Kent, and then I quit and wasn't going back to work, But it took 2 incomes back then because we didn't make that much money. And I wanted to work as long as I could. But they told me there was a policy that you had to quit when you were 3 months. So I went into the human resource office and said, I'm pregnant, so I have to quit. And he said, well, can you work till you're 3 months? And I said, I'm already 6 months. So he said, well, you just can work as long as you want to then. They were afraid of lawsuits and all that. So I quit and had Kent, and then they called me and wanted me to, they were moving their offices to Houston, and they wanted me to come manage the office here. But I wasn't going back to work. I wasn't going to do that, so I turned them down. So after that, I started working in Sinton for an accounting firm that changed names about 3 times, but the rest of my career was with them. So we lived in a garage apartment in Gregory that the landowner owned that lived right there close. And she was like a second mother to me. I, was away from home, had a baby. If he didn't work when I thought he should, well, I'd call him his bride and she'd come help me. So it was a real neat experience. Then we moved into a house. I guess this was stairs. And so then when I got pregnant with Carrie, I didn't want to do the stairs. So we rented a house that was right across from the superintendent and in Gregory. And he used to watch my kids play, and he said, if I just had a thimbleful of that energy. So he was the one that hired George at GP, Mr. Andrews.
When Mr. Andrews hired me, he promised me he'd move me up to become head track coach one day, which he did in 4 years.
His son was a pole vaulter, so he wanted George to coach him. I didn't have friends that were close, but my landlord and Miss Andrews were real good about. So, if you go anywhere, we didn't have seat belts, so you had to, or car seats back then. We just had to kind of make sure they didn't tumble out of the seats. But it was different because I was used to working, and then all of a sudden I'm staying home with babies. But it, worked out okay. So we didn't change much for him because he wasn't ever home. He stayed gone a lot.
Well, first of all, I drove a school bus in the mornings to go pick up kids and bring them to school. So my day started early, and then I stayed late after school coaching kids. So I had long days. I think I was assistant 1 year, and then I became the head track coach. Oh, yeah, I was a JV football.
And scout. He scouted.
Well, I went and watched our next opponent play.
So he had games on Thursday night and then games on Friday night. So,
well, I go to games on Friday night. I went and watched our opponent play.
Yeah, Kent went to his first football game when he was 2 weeks old. We sat in the car. He was 2 weeks old when he went to his first football game. When they got big enough to take, though, I told him, if you ever misbehave, you can't go back. I'll have to get a babysitter because I, couldn't handle them. They sat and watched just like they were supposed to. So they've grown up with being coaches' kids, which is good in a way. And then another way, we always heard, well, they should be good. They're coaches' kids. But the head coaches, she had children that were about the same age as a little older than Kent and Carrie, so it was like a family group. So we got along real well. At that time, there were only 3 coaches. Now there's 15, 16. So
How can you tell that they're going to be good?
Well, just go every week. They show their talents.
But you go down the hall and see some kids and say, why don't you come out for, if they were good in PE too. If they were good in PE, then he thought they'd be good in track. So he recruited a lot that way. But we stayed pretty busy because like Kent, then he started Little League football in Corpus. So those games would be on Saturday. So we'd go Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday. Then when they got in junior high, they had basketball games that were Tuesday and Friday. Then they had 2 nights a week. So when they both got in junior high, we'd split. One go to one, the other go to the other basketball game. So she went to University of Houston on track scholarship and tore her ACL her freshman year, or she would have qualified for the national meet. So Kent went to Baylor. Well, he went to A&I, and then he went to New Mexico Junior College, won the national title there, and then went to Baylor and got his degree from Baylor. So
Pole vaulting is better.
yeah, he was a good football player and a good pole vaulter. So
I wanted to ask you about coaching kids versus coaching your kids. How did you differentiate that, Mr. Harris?
I really didn't. Just all the same.
Did you see anything different in how he approached?
no, well, Carrie started. She would like to come out here and run. She was pretty quick. Well, she'd like to ride the bus, and so he said, "Okay, you can go to the bus to McAllen if you run the 100 or whatever." But she got there and she wouldn't run. So
That's when she was about 5 years old.
I know. So he took her behind the bleachers and spat at her a couple of times, and then she came out crying. So the older girls said, "Come on, we'll give you a snow cone." So she ran barefoot, won the 100, ate her snow cone. That was it. From then on, she was hooked. Now, Ken always participated. He always pole vaulted and ran the hurdles and whatever. They were both good athletes. So been to a lot of track meets and a lot of football games. So oh, he left.
I left in 82 and went to Refugio. Well, I'd had a couple of offers before from Refugio, and I knew it was a good place. So I decided it was time to change. Actually, my first year there, the only job they had was in junior high. But I had the understanding that they were going to move me up immediately, So at midterm the next year, the defensive coordinator left, so they moved me up at midterm, and I became the girls' track coach and the defensive coordinator
At Refugio.
at Refugio.
How did they know you would be a good DC?
I don't know if they did, but he just trusted me.
Well, they wanted Kent too. Kent was a good quarterback. So
He led them to the state championship playing quarterback.
and then 30 years later, our grandson quarterbacks East Menora to a state championship.
Really?
And had to beat Refugio to get there.
First year, Refugio beat them. I guess his junior year. Then the next year, they beat Refugio and then went on to win the state championship. So that was an exciting day for me. When they won a game, everything was good. When you win, it's the boys, and when you lose, it's the coach. That's the first thing I learned. And then I learned to keep my ears closed. But it was all good when they win. It's like they wanted to get beat. I mean, nobody wants to get beat. But some of the people that did the most complaining were people that hadn't played the sport or whatever. So, and at the football banquets, they always honored them, and it's very nice. But there was some trying times too. Most of it was. I mean, I enjoyed the sport, so I enjoyed watching him and watching my kids. It was a full-time job, really. So. But most of the time he won, so it was pretty good. Had some losses, but.
How long was I assistant to Bobby Kelly? 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Anyway, Coach Kelly got a DWI and he got fired. And I applied for the head job and was hired. Is how I became head coach in Refugio.
How long did you head coach there?
9 years.
Did you? 9 years as head coach.
We went to the semifinals 3 years, but I could never win a state championship, dang it. That's my biggest regret.
Where were the state semis? Where were those held?
One of them was in San Marcos. Where else, Patsie?
Alamo Dome. In San
Yeah,
Antonio.
we played in the Alamo Dome, San Antonio.
Played in San
Then
Marcos.
played San Marcos.
Yeah, then you played in some Houston.
We played in Astrodome, I guess, maybe.
Yeah.
All those kids get.
It's
It
quite
was
an
for those
experience.
Refugio kids.
Yeah,
Most
that's
of them
what
had never been out of Refugio.
Gregory Portland wanted me to come back, and I was tired of making that drive every day. I never moved back over. I lived here and drove to Refugio for 19 years.
We thought we had our house rented to a student coach, and then she backed out, so that made it tough that first year. The only place we could find to rent was a trailer house about 10 miles out in the country. We stayed there, a month or so?
Yeah.
I finally said, you either divorce me or move me, because I'm not staying out here anymore. Strong wind and that trailer would just give it this. If you forgot a loaf of bread, you had to drive 10 miles. So then one of the players' father had a garage apartment that he rented. It was a real nice garage apartment. So Ken has still some good friends over there that he, is in contact with, even after that, just that 1 year.
I was athletic director and head football coach.
I had a secretary, an office. Didn't have to coach any or teach any classes.
I was head of all the sports as far as
Scheduling and
what have you.
He didn't know about coaching girls, but he could see the talent over there, and then he talked some into running. But you won 5 in a row.
No, not 5 in a row, but won 6 overall. Girls track. They've only won 1 since. And some of those girls still keep in touch with me.
Well, 2 of them in there that one of it says Missy, and then Tanya,
Ginger,
Tasha.
Gina.
Well, those girls were pretty tough at first. They didn't want to hurt, Well, if you want to win, you got to hurt sometimes. But they all did. One of them, I guess, at the state meet, got a cramp, George, or pulled a muscle, Sophronia. And so she crawled. They were going to win the race, but as it was, she got second, or
She fell down.
and crawled to the finish line, and then
Got third.
got third. So at least she got a medal. And then he carried her to the winner's stand. So, we've been invited to lots of weddings over there. One of them asked, "Will you give me away when I get married, Coach?" Missy became an educator. She was state champion in the 800?
Yeah.
Tanya Jones is a school administrator that ran track for him.
Coach Harris was a lot more than just a coach to me. He was my family. He was a counselor for me. He was definitely my biggest cheerleader. He meant a lot to me. And I remember one day I was a freshman in high school, and Tanya came up to me and told me, "Hey, Coach Harris is leaving. He's going to Portland." And I remember the devastation that I felt. I just felt like that I would not be able to do it without Coach Harris if he left us. And I remember Tanya and I, we cried like babies. We cried so much that Coach Harris changed his mind and he committed to staying with us. And it was that day when he decided that he would stay in Refugio with us. That was my day that I decided that if he could drive back and forth and commit to me as an athlete, that I was going to commit to him, and I was going to do my very, very best because he chose to stay here with us to support us. Also something about Coach Harris, not only was he our track coach, our counselor, but, he drove the bus too. And I remember evenings when we would be driving home from track meets, and it was late, and all the girls were in the back of the bus. It was silent on the bus. Everybody was asleep. I would put my ice chest, I would pull up next to Coach Harris. I'd sit there, and we'd visit the whole way home. Because I wanted him to stay awake. I wanted him to be safe. And he was taking care of us, and I wanted to take care of him. And that was just, one of those things that he just meant so much to us. Something else about Coach Harris, he wasn't just a coach, man. He cared about every athlete, if they were sick, if they were ill. And you know what? You know why we had such a great track program? Because Coach Harris had a black truck, a little black Toyota truck. And back in those days, I don't think there was a law you couldn't ride in the back of a truck. Coach Harris, before track practice early in the mornings, he would drive by and pick up some of the athletes so that they could get to track. Or we'd take them home. We'd drive them home. That's just Coach Harris. He didn't just say, you need to be at track, get there. No. He was going to do whatever he could to get there because he believed in you and he wanted you to do the very best that you could do.
Ricky Rhodes' son, Jack, got into coaching because of the influence that George had on his dad. Who did we take to that school in Houston, George? She's in the service now.
Teresa Lewis.
Yeah. We packed her up and took her, because most of them, they graduate, they sit right there and they don't do anything. Well, for instance,
I took her up there, and as we were driving up, said, Coach Harris, they're all black.
but she got a degree and then went in the service. Yeah. Well, and Alma is she's a professor.
She's a teacher.
Yeah, but
No, she's a school teacher.
she has her doctorate, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, she may have.
Yeah. So I think there's been a lot of them that he's, like I said, Tito and Ruben still come by. Ben Greathouse, sent him to A&M to high jump. He set a collegiate record out there, didn't he?
Oh, I don't know about that. He improved a lot.
He still calls and comes by, and at least once a year. So there's been quite a few.
He's a kid I got out for track, and I got him out there. Didn't know what I was going to do with him, so I stuck him over in high jump, and he jumped 6'4". So I got him into A&M, got him into the track program, and he improved to right at 7 foot.
They loved him. And they loved me because I made brownies and lemon squares for them. So
That's the reason they named the building after me. The kid that went to the school board and had that done, he got a college education because of me.
Tito Garza and Ruben Garza, they still come by.
Ruben
Lozano, they still come by ever so often. And
I just flat told them they're going to college. And they were two Hispanic kids, and they would have never went if it hadn't been for me. And now they'd do anything in the world for me.
And they'll tell you, that if it hadn't been for Coach Harris, we wouldn't. And we went to watch them whenever we could too. So it was just like family. So
Coach Harris was more than a coach for me. He was one of the most important people in my life. I knew he had my back, and he would help me in any way that he could. It all started with my early career with Coach Harris in 8th grade. I got in big trouble for fighting on campus and after school. Coach Harris was there to save my behind. No telling what would have happened if he would not have been there. With his influence and me knowing that he had my back, I tried to become a better person.
I said that Ruben and Tito both coached, didn't they?
Yeah.
That he was telling about what you told Ruben when he wasn't going to school, when he's cleaning the bathrooms.
remember, he had gone to school. He just quit and came home before he finished his degree. Don't remember what I told him.
Do you want to clean commodes the rest of your life? No, sir. So we put him in the car and took him to where?
He's at Angelo State.
Angelo State.
So I didn't take him. He went back.
Oh, I thought we took him. We took some.
Coach Harris, you remember the first time when you approached me in 1972 and asked me that there were 3 colleges that were interested in me, 2 junior colleges and a 4-year college. And you asked me which one I wanted to go to. And I replied, Coach, I don't want to go to college. And Coach replied, that's not what I asked. Coach Harris said, pick one. So I eventually picked the 4-year college. And he replied, we'll go in there this summer. I will take you to meet the coach and go to the financial offices to get you some help. When we returned from San Angelo, Ms. Harris helped me fill out all the paperwork, which helped me to receive financial help for the next 4 years. Thanks to Coach Harris and Ms. Harris, I was able to succeed in college for the next 4 years and receive my teaching certificate and taught for the next 30 years. If it weren't for them, I would not know what I would have done. But thanks to them, I have succeeded in my life. And I want to tell you both, I love you very much.
The Tom Landry Award. I'm proud of it because all the coaches in Texas selected me. It was voted on by all the coaches in Texas.
And then this one, 87, he was awarded the girls track coach. He was a all-star coach for the South team.
That was also voted on by all the South coaches in the state of Texas.
He got the, what is a Rotary Award? Some award in 3 Rivers, Legend Reward. He was the director in the Hall of Fame of the Coaches Association. So,
when I think back to high school and my relationship with Coach Harris, Miss Harris, Carrie and Kent, I was their little sister. I can't explain how they just, not only for me, they took in everyone. Everyone became their family. We joke that Kent and Carrie got an extra sister that they didn't know they were going to get, but their relationships for me made me so strong, knowing I had another set of family that loved me unconditionally.
My family moved to Portland, Texas in 2004, 2005, somewhere around that time. And what I remember the most was that Gregory Portland football was in peak form. They were just going off to the semifinals. Every kid wanted to play football. And I figured that that was the thing that drove the town. And sure enough, a lot of people in the Coastal Bend assumed that we only did football in Portland and nothing else. I come into high school and I find out very harshly that athletics, as competitive as we were, came second. Coach Harris had implemented a culture that cared about academics first and making you a good person and making sure that you were doing the right things, but also learning how to win at the same time. So for us, that translated into getting tutoring whenever we needed it. It translated to Coach Harris personally overseeing report cards and calling people out for not taking care of business. And just as a player and as a student, I don't think that I've ever had anybody as hands-on as Coach Harris.
One of the stories I want to talk about Coach Harris is when I went to Gregory Portland, and after 9 years of referral with Coach Harris, and one day after 2-a-days, went in the coach's office, and one of the coaches was, I think it was Freddie Flores, was drawing on a chalkboard Coach Harris. He drew Coach Harris with his arm raised and his hand up here, and he wrote above that the hand. And I started looking at it, and he said, because somebody got the hand today, and he does this when he hollers at you across the field, and he does that. So when you get the hand, you're either in trouble or something's up. And so I realized after 9 years coaching with him at referral, everybody got the hand, but I didn't think about calling it the hand. And so, yeah, the coaches there knew what the hand meant. You know, you did something wrong or somebody did something wrong, and he wanted to talk about it. So, yeah, that was a funny story about the hand, and I don't know if Coach Harris realized about that, but he did that a lot. So, yeah, we had fun, a lot of fun.
This book was given to me by Tito Garza, who I coached at Gregory Portland, and he was very appreciative of the fact that I encouraged him to go to college, and he got a college degree and has a good job and so forth. This is some pictures taken at the state track meet.
So he kept the first ring, and the next 4 he gave to assistant coaches. So fine, it always happens on Mother's Day, the state track meet. So the last state championship ring he gave to me, and my daughter was so thrilled. Oh, Mom, gave that to you? Hell, he's giving one to everybody in South Texas. I was the only one left.
I gave one to my dad.
But this is Missy, who has a saying in there for him, and this is our daughter. This was at the state meet.
This is a picture of a kid that played football in Refugio, and he wrote this paper in English class, and it was pretty good. So I sent it to the Texas High School Coaches Magazine, and they published it. And this is a copy of it. And as I told you, he died a few months ago from COVID.
The one above it is he was a director for the Texas High School Coaches Association, 97 through 2001.
Wait, in addition to coaching and all that other stuff?
Yeah, he was a director too. And that's what Refugio gave him when he retired. He was there 1982 through 2001. It kind of has his records stuff on it.
That win and loss record at Refugio's pretty salty.
Pretty good, but most coaches that coach over there do have a pretty good record. This is a young lady that I coached in Refugio that worked extremely hard and won a state championship in 800 meters. And she stays in pretty close touch with me even today.
Well, that's the high school coaches game up there. That
All-Star game.
Yeah.
Picture of the South team that I coached.
This was his first secretary at GP. And this was his sponsor excellent award. I don't remember when he got that. And that you got a silver medal for at Refugio. That's semifinals.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. State semifinal.
This is Refugio football on the bottom, and some
State,
of his players.
state semifinal teams.
3 of them.
Yeah. This is a kid that was in the Coast Guard that said some awful nice things about
Who is that?
Carter, Stephen Carter.
That is, we beat Carroll.
Oh, that's the Battle of the Bridge.
Battle of the Bridge.
We told you about Arthur Smith. He's another kid that ran the hurdles at Baylor.
That's Baylor. From Refugio.
Yeah. That's a picture of George with his 100th win. Those two. Our granddaughters with a football player from here.
One year, my girls' track team in Refugio, to give me something special, they went to town after track season and had their pictures taken in formals. I'm not sure what year that was.
And then he got Coach of the Year several times. Those are plaques. That's his state championship. 6th. I got the 6th ring. Told you that. And here's 2002 varsity Wildcats.
State semifinal.
State semifinals.
That's very important.
Then a lot of this stuff like these little kids that coaches that he coached with would give him stuff like that. That was at the Dave Campbell autographed that for him at the Alamo Dome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a Lifetime Athletic Booster Member award that I got from GP Wildcat. Here's a Hall of Honor from the Texas High School Coaches Association.
Coastal Bend Coaches Association.
Yeah. Here is the Tom Landry Award plaque, and here's pictures that were taken that night at the awards presentation. This is my principal that went all the way to Waco to support me.
That's an amazing award.
Yeah, it is.
My favorite part about you telling that story was saying, because it was your peers.
Yeah.
That, man.
So when he became head football coach at Refugio, he had to give up the track job. He just couldn't keep up with everything. So that was an article that was there. And then
School board gave me this after my 100th win in Refugio.
this is from Tanya Jones.
This is a girl I coached in Refugio. Had probably a big impact on her life. She's now a principal at Wallace Junior High and was selected as one of the principals of the year in the Houston area last year.
That's A&I, where he ran track.
I love that picture.
And then this is AAU award. He got
For the track stuff?
for the summer track. He got an award for that. And then who made this? George, was it the tennis? Carl Pruitt, the tennis coach out here,
Made this bench.
made the bench with the two schools that the only place he coached, Refugio and
Helmets.
put the helmets on it. And then I guess he retired from GP. They gave him the football encased in that thing. And then there's over there, I think it's Coastal Bend Fellowship of Christian Athletes.
Yeah. And then on top of it, then they name a building.
Yeah.
What do you, man? Coach, not everybody gets reckoned. I mean, a lot of people work 50 years, but
Yeah, that's true.
this is it's so different because, I don't know, this level of success and then the number of people you impacted.
Yeah, it was special.
My mom and dad are two of the most wonderful people that I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. So I'm gonna have to kind of suck it up and tell you a little bit about what it was like growing up with them. My mom was, believe it or not, she was the disciplinarian. Mom instilled a lot of structure, discipline, respect are the three words that come to mind when I think about my mother and growing up in that family as a kid. I remember vividly when Carrie and I would come home from church in the back seat of the car, and we were always really anxious to ask the question, how do we act? Because if she said good, Sunday was going to be a really good day. If she said bad, I'm disappointed. We knew that we weren't going to have a good Sunday. But it kind of characterizes what my mom built in us. It was a lot of respect. You always opened the door for a lady. It was always yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir. My dad, on the other hand, was a little different. He was a big believer in toughness, mental toughness in particular, and work ethic. I never really understood the mental toughness part until I was an adult. But everything with Dad was about even pain, even injuries. He was of the opinion that there was a component of mental toughness to dealing with injuries. And I can honestly say that that may be one of the characteristics that's benefited me the most in my life, because I've been through some struggles, went through a divorce, and was in a situation where I didn't get to see my son every day. And honestly, it was the mental toughness that got me through that, because it was one of the toughest things that I've been through. We didn't have a lot growing up. Dad was a coach, Mom was a secretary, and we didn't have a lot of extras. I remember a couple things in particular. I remember us wanting to go on a vacation, in particular Astral World in Houston, well, back when it was still there. And they were agreeable, they wanted to go. But the condition to it was that Carrie and I had to pick up enough aluminum cans on the side of the highway to pay for the tickets to get into Astral World. And we did. We did. And it was kind of interesting, because it was those early mornings on the side of the highway picking up aluminum cans that sort of convinced me that I was never going to be a coach. I wanted to make enough to buy the tickets for the kids. But, having gone through that experience taught me a lot, made me appreciate things much more. And I'm very, very thankful for that. So I guess I would conclude by saying that when you think about the characteristics that I've described about Mom and Dad, the discipline, the respect, on Mom's side, the work ethic, and the mental toughness on my dad's side, I don't really know what characteristics two people could better instill in a child. And I'm so thankful.
Mom, I want to thank you for, I feel like, instilling the values in me to make me a better wife, mother, daughter, niece. You instilled those values, and I really want to thank you for that. My dad, I want to thank you for pushing me to be in the coaching profession. I'll never forget that Kent wanted to hire me with Upjohn, the pharmaceutical company, and I called my dad, and his response was, I tell you what, if you want your kids to be athletes, you stick to coaching. So here we are 33 years later. I always said I wanted to be a bus driver, and I do drive a bus, but thank you, Dad, for pushing me to stay in that profession, because it's definitely my passion and my calling.
So that's it so far. I want to thank all of you that took time to participate in this video or this documentary for Mom and Dad. Mom and Dad, thank you.
My recollection of Astroworld was, I can't remember the name of the roller coaster, but Kent had to ride it one more time before we left. And I was sitting with Mom, Kent was sitting with Dad, and they went down below and took a turn, and my dad's car keys fell out of his pocket in high weeds, and all the Astroworld workers at the roller coaster had to get flashlights, and we were there for probably another hour looking for Dad's car keys, but we did find them eventually.
Yo, the guy with the hair.
Well, he didn't have that hair then. I don't know what that's all about. When our son-in-law came to visit, George went to the back room and wouldn't come out for a long time because his hair was like this. So.
Everybody just assumes because Dad was such a good athlete that all of her athletic prowess came from Dad.
They did.
But she also said that Mom's still athletic.
Yeah, I still have all mine. I didn't give it away. Well, I played basketball, but I usually fouled out. I didn't get to go in until the score was really one-sided.
But I have to say, Mom, it takes a whole lot of athleticism to climb the water tower in George West and spray paint the score when George West beat Three Rivers. That's talent.
We never did join any clubs because all our time was spent. Wait a minute.
The picture's too little, you can't tell.
Well, you can too. He looks at all of our pictures and he says, "Hey, sure were pretty then." What do you mean then?
I found the right one.